Vikings are hot, and the Packers are not coming into the border battle here in Lambeau. Josh and I are going to break down just exactly how the Vikings are to go in and get another win against the division rival. Coming up next. Josh and I are still a little hungover from the 49ers victory, but we got another game to break down for you guys. And I think, as I alluded to, I think it'll be another Vikings victory. But we want to kind of dive into some of the reasons why and how that might play out. And even, some sneaky ways the Packers might be able to stay in this game and kind of, I don't want to put upset out into the universe, but just kind of break down what could give the Vikings some trouble as well. But before we dive into all that, Josh, it's been a couple days. How you doing? It's the weekend, little Saturday recording.
Yeah,
it's our first. I think this is the first nooner we've ever done.
I was just gonna say,
in the middle of the day right now with our kids. Mine are napping. I don't know what Josh has done with his, but we're here.
Well, one of mine got to sleep over at his cousin, so he's not even here, and the other one is hanging out with my wife. And yeah, it feels weird to record at noon. I just had 2 breakfast burritos. It's usually not my pre-recording snack or meal or whatever. So, but no, I'm excited. There's always the fear of the trap game and hungover from the victory of over San Francisco. I mean, to me that's one of the, when we think in general terms, that's kind of the only way I see us faltering in Lambeau. The Packers have been in free fall mode, so unless something crazy or drastic happens, I really think this should be a team or a solid winning handily type of victory. I didn't say that very well, but you know what I mean. So
yeah, no, I'm with you. It is Halloween weekend, so it's in Minnesota, Wisconsin area. It's already viciously cold. I don't know if you're getting out doing any trick or treating with the kids. Mine are not, but they're dressing up. Yeah. If you're watching on YouTube, reason I shaved is because my son's going to be Iron Man and I'm Spider-Man, so he's working on his goatee. I shaved, but I think we'll make a day out of it. But nice. Tomorrow we'll be locked in, and then I'm excited for the Monday night game too. And the rest of the slate. But for this particular game, there are even some national pundits kind of highlighting this one as one that might be interesting. Mm-hmm. I think it's just coming off of like the national attention of that 49ers game. I don't think a lot of them are. It shouldn't be a good game.
No, I think I think a lot of national pundits are kind of, because of our record, it's easy to look at the Vikings. We lost to the Bucks. It's easy to say like we're not a good team, but we're a better overall team than last year, in my opinion. It just, you don't know that unless you focus your attention on the Vikings. So I think they're probably looking at the Packers, who started off 2-1 as a team that might be able to right the ship against the Vikes as a home game, but it really shouldn't be as close.
It should not. I feel like if it's close, it's going to be ugly as hell. Mm-hmm. And if it's not ugly, the Vikings should run away with it.
Yeah, and I think the Packers do pretty well in the trenches, and I think that will help them be competitive in most games this season. Like their offensive line gives Love time, and they can run the ball pretty well. And then on defense, they have some scary guys up there too. So I mean, if their trenches are something that'll help them stay consistently competitive, I think so.
Yeah, I would think so too. And that's, I think, where we're going to start is Vikings offense against the Packers defense. A lot of it will be in the trenches. We'll get there here shortly. But what I wanted to start with is sort of from a schematic standpoint, ways that Kevin O'Connell and Kirk and Jordan Addison and so on can stress this Joe Barry defense, and what Joe Barry might do from a game plan standpoint coming into this game. So Joe Barry, second year as the DC, for the Packers. He comes from that same Fangio tree that Ed Donatel did, and runs a lot of the Fangio staples, a lot like we did last year. You will see a lot of similar looks to that. But what's interesting about that is last year when after Justin Jefferson, I think it was 9 for 184 in the first Packers game, kind of was brought back down to earth by the way they approached that matchup in the next game. Um, there was all that jamming at the line of scrimmage with safety help over top. They played him really aggressively. They played a lot of man coverage, or even cover one double where it's just 2-on-1 on Jefferson, whether that's north-south or an east-west double. And, he sees some of that from every team, right? But they did it very effectively, and they did a great job to neutralize him. So I'm curious to see if they go to some of that against Jordan Addison, who's probably more susceptible to it.
Yep.
And if they really go all out to kind of neutralize him, what does that look like? We've seen that game plan before. If they try to replicate that, I think that might be kind of working in the Vikings' favor as well. Like, that's kind of the one thing you're like, oh, Addison had the big game with the 2 tuds and was a big driving force in that victory. If he's taken away, what does this offense look like? No Addison, no JJ. I think that's kind of right I think where the weapons are right now, when you've got the running game starting to pick up, the screen game's been very effective recently. TJ Hawkinson coming off a huge game. KJ Osborne kind of seems to have gotten his confidence back, hasn't had a drop in a few weeks here now. I think that's exactly what you want, is for them to hone in on one thing.
Yeah. I think
sell out for it.
Yeah, I think that is best case scenario, because then Hawk is a much better potential to go off. And you mentioned the screen game. I really like the difference between the Madison and Akers reps. And I like getting Akers out in space. I love that the Jordan Addison pass to Ty Chandler, if we get Ty Chandler out in the passing game. So yeah, I think Kevin O'Connell's creativity could be on full display here. And if they think that they're going to devote all their time to Jordan Addison, then that can be the way Addison helps us win this week. Because you're right, he might be more susceptible to the jamming at the line, the more physical play against corners. He's pretty undersized still for an NFL receiver, and I think that could give him fits. But I mean, O'Connell will throw him in motion a lot. They'll try to get him into open space. And I went back and rewatched some of the Broncos-Packers game, and the Broncos, the offense was able to scheme Cortland Sutton open into some open passes and some Jerry Jeudy catches that were no Packer defenders were around. So I think from a coaching standpoint, if O'Connell's on his game, I think we'll still be all right. But yeah, if they devote extra resources to Addison, that's a net positive for us.
Yeah, and it's almost a win-win, I think. I really don't think they have answers for this offense. So my kind of view on that is like, yeah, I think it seems like the worst outcome for them to kind of neutralize Jordan Addison, because everybody's kind of hyped up on Jordan Addison right now and everybody's on that train. But I think it's just as advantageous if they just kind of sit in their, just their standard coverages on the back end, the way they do when they're in their quarter, half, the half, quarters, and sit in that. I think you'll see Kevin O'Connell really be able to stress those zones. Whichever way they try to go on the back end, I think it's advantage Vikings.
Yeah.
I think you could see O'Connell dial up a lot of those like little tight end delays to Hawkinson that they converted the 3rd and 12 on. I mean, he was able to hold the eyes of guys like Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner with those designs. And those guys aren't on Green Bay. I think you can get Quay Walker on his back foot a lot easier than you can Fred Warner. So I like TJ over the middle. I think he'll be able to exploit underneath, and I think that will consequentially open up those big digs and those big crossers over the middle behind those linebackers when they go to this kind of stuff.
And I think
it's going to be a lot of big chunks.
Yeah, and I looked at the injury report before we went on, and Jair Alexander is a game time decision, so we don't know what'll happen
Yes.
there, and that might play a role in what Barry decides to throw at us defensively. I know Devondre Campbell is still questionable.
Yep.
I thought I saw he was leaning towards playing, but he's been battling an injury throughout the whole season, so it's not even probably the full. The Packers secondary or second level, third level defense is probably not at full strength coming into this game, regardless. So.
Yeah, exactly. And then while we're on the subject, real quick, there are 4 questionable players on the Packers side for this game. The other 2 are pretty consequential as well. I think in starting center Josh Myers,
Yeah.
and tight end Luke Musgrave, whose injury surprisingly is not related to the Kareem Jackson hit. It's like an ankle or something.
That hit was nasty.
That was
Oh, man.
that was wild. He's one of the older safeties in the league too.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. It's not like it's just untethered athleticism. It's just his
Right.
old school mentality.
Exactly.
But it's one of those things. Oh, we got somebody in here. James, thanks for tuning in, brother. Just finished a half marathon.
Wow.
James, why would you do that? Oh man,
what are you running for on a Saturday morning, James?
Yeah, kudos nonetheless.
Yeah, congrats.
I could never. But when you look at this matchup, this I feel like is advantage Vikings, especially on the outside.
Yep.
Now we've got a really, really red hot unit on the offensive line going up against another pretty tough test. It's the Packers aren't as creative with their fronts as the Niners are. I don't expect as much of a Huskers and Titans suck. I have nothing better to do. Sounds about right.
Fair enough.
All right, we'll give you that. But you do have some serious gamers on this side of the ball.
Yeah.
Devontae Wyatt looks like he'll go. He's had like 18 pressures this season. He's been pretty decent on the interior, at least in the pass rush. Rashawn Gary, of course, has been awesome. I think he has 28 pressures and 6 sacks to this point in the season. Kenny Clark's been solid, as he always is.
Yep.
It's a good group up front. I don't see when you have an elite edge rusher, that always is like a big concern coming into a game, but it's for the Vikings group, it's the elite interior penetrators that I'm more concerned with. I was more concerned with Javon Hargrave than I was Nick Bosa because this tackle duo the Vikings have is just unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure.
As much as I think Brian O'Neill sometimes gets a little bit overlooked with Darisaw as sort of the shiny new toy, he's just about every bit as good on the other side. Darisaw to this point has been the only tackle per PFF with an 85 or better run blocking grade and an 85 or better pass blocking grade. So, I mean, he's obviously been dominant. But between those two guys, whichever side they align Rashawn Gary, I like the Vikings' chances. And Kirk too, when it's an effective edge rusher, he doesn't compromise his tackles by taking these deep drops. He wastes no movement with his drops. He's very concise. He doesn't hold onto the ball particularly long. So that's another thing that kind of helps those tackles be effective. When they kick Rashawn Gary inside on passing downs, I think it could get a little dicey. There I saw one pick after Caleb Farley. That's right. And for what it's worth, too, that interior has been playing really well. Ezra Cleveland might be back. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they'll still go with Ezra over Reisner as well as he played. But it'll be interesting to see what they do there.
Right.
I think I still feel like it's kind of still advantage Vikings here. Even with as much as I respect Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. I think that it's going to be important for the Vikes to start off on their first drive with a good rhythm with their offensive line. I'm
Yeah, 4 of
like,
7 games they've had a first drive turnover.
yeah, exactly. And I worry about a big momentum booster in the beginning at Lambeau Field. So I think if our O line starts on our first drive, holds their own, does what they did against the 49ers, we move the ball, even if it's just a field goal or something. I think a drive like that to start the game will really set the tone. Because the Packers are equally as bad of a first quarter team in terms of scoring as the Vikings have been this year. They're both in the bottom 5 of the league. The Packers didn't score a point in the first half against the Broncos last week, and I think getting off to a good start for us. The Broncos' problem last week, the reason the Packers kept it close, is because Broncos were only held to field goals. And so I think if our offensive line holds that pass rush from the get-go, if we get an early touchdown or two or go up 10-3, 10-0 or something, I think that's like your ideal scenario to set the tone, so we don't want the fans to get all into it off a sack on the first drive or something. I think that would be the old nightmare start for us. But
Yeah,
I think our O line's up to the task again. I'm feeling more confident our O line against a good pass rush this year than I have in years past.
for sure. And they've also been so good communicating, like picking up stunts and loopers. So I think that'll help. So I think even if Barry gets creative, stunting his 4-man rush, I really like the Vikings' chances to hold up. Where they've struggled is when there is a free rusher and there's not a hot outlet for Kirk. That's when they're kind of out schemed. But that's something I don't expect from Joe Barry. Maybe he throws us a curveball, but we'll see. Go ahead.
And well, I was just going to say, and that's kind of it's weird to me that, and to a lot of fans, why Reisner hasn't started more, not necessarily over Cleveland, but over Ingram, because his tape, he's much better at communicating and deciding who's going to pick up rushers at the offensive line. Like, he's not an elite talent necessarily, but you can tell he's way better at orchestrating than Ingram is for sure. And so, it would be interesting to see if he gets back in there. This game in some capacity. I don't know what that looks like exactly, but
yeah, exactly. But again, the Vikings are better in every facet. It's just hoping they go out and show it. And like I said, we've seen Joe Barry kind of mix it up when he sees the Vikings. So if he has any curveballs or any tricks up his sleeve, more than anything, I'm just kind of curious to see what that might be. The way he tries to attack this defense. Somebody who we have no idea how he's going to attack anyone at any given time is Brian Flores, and that's not good for a young quarterback like Jordan Love, who's had some issues even bailing from clean pockets. And guys like DJ Wanham and Daniil Hunter, as rangy as those guys are, you can get into some trouble bailing from a clean pocket.
Right.
If he, I don't know if he's seeing just something out of the corner of his eye and getting a little scared. Maybe it's just like an internal clock kind of thing. But whatever it is, if he panics and tries to escape, especially the outside, I think he's probably getting corralled by one of those really long, speedy edge rushers that we've got. So I think the only 3 20-plus yard runs for the Packers this season are Jordan Love runs. So, he can get on his horse a little bit. I could see him having a broken play scramble for an explosive play, stuff like that. But as far as him being able to sit in the pocket comfortably and attack us by pushing the ball downfield, I don't like his chances. Brian Flores has just been so on the nose with his game plans, except for like the Chargers game. The Vikings blitzed 82% of the time in the Chargers game, and Justin Herbert was just dialed in. But outside of that, it seems like he's been pushing all the right buttons. So with no David Bakhtiari, they've drafted well. They have good depth, but especially if like Josh Myers is out, and all of a sudden they're having to deal with these pre-snap looks without their usual captain of the O-line, signal caller, guy who's setting the protections, and you have some maybe just someone less comfortable there, someone with less chemistry with Love and LaFleur, I think that's a bad recipe for a lot of negative offensive plays for the Packers.
Yeah.
That said, though, too, like we talked about how slowly these teams get started.
Hmm.
For for whatever reason, the Packers are first in second half EPA per play.
Of course they are.
So I think a lot of it is going to be about just kind of just keeping the pressure on, keeping your foot on their neck once we get out in
Yeah.
front, which I think both of us expect us to.
Yeah.
I think the Vikes will ride a lot of their uh, momentum offensively they got from last
Hmm.
game into this one, and I think they start hot. And if that's the case, then it's on B-Flo and the guys to just maintain that lead, maybe make a big play here and there. And they've been
Yeah.
fantastic at limiting explosive plays, which is, one of that's how you're going to generate a comeback is big chunks. They were
Right.
third in 15 plus yard plays allowed per game prior to last week. I haven't seen that updated
Yeah.
figure yet anyway, but it's a good defense about, we talked about Donatel being bend, don't break.
Yeah.
This defense is more don't bend, maybe break, I feel
Yeah.
like. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, and I think Jordan Love is good to beat us deep once, maybe twice, depending on game script. I really wanted him to struggle this year because I want the Packers fans to know what it's like to deal with a quarterback that's not, one of the elite ones in the league, because they haven't had to suffer through that for like 30 plus years or whatever it was. But Jordan Love has impressed me at times. I think his big issue that I've seen is inconsistency. Like sometimes he'll drop a nice pass in, but other times he's airmailing it over receivers, and I think that's where Flores can have a lot of fun, and we can get our guy Cam Bynum some more interceptions, because he does want to push it downfield. His completion percentage is way below 60% right now, or last time I checked anyway, which I think it was after their game against the Broncos. And so it's partly because he's trying to move the ball downfield. He's not taking a lot of dump offs, but that also opens up opportunities for our defense to get some turnovers. So they might connect on one downfield, which could hurt us. But again, hopefully we have built that lead, and so it's, we can absorb that. We talked before the show. There are only 2 touchdowns last week were Love touchdown passes, but one was the dual possession with Pat Surtain and Romeo Doubs, and the other one was the little sidearm flick he did in the red zone, and then it got tipped and went into the hands of Jaden Reed. And I think that one was on 4th down. So it's like it wasn't like, okay, they're at the 1, they would have scored the next play anyway. So
Mhm.
I think for Love and the Packers offense, they're just, if we can get them in a position where they can't rely on an AJ Dillon drive where he runs 6 times, because they can move, their offensive line is good enough to move the ball that way. So we need to make sure they're not in a close game where they can do that. I think that's one of the best ways we can do it. We want, like you said, Love trying to roll out, trying to push the ball deep, because that's when we'll snag some turnovers and go and really build on hopefully a lead that we get early on. So
Yeah, and I think too, like this team also might be able to snuff out the Packers' run game pretty early on. Um, Aside from the Eagles game, this has been a really, really good run defense.
yeah,
For whatever reason, Jonathan Bullard took a step up. We talked about that on last episode.
yep,
Jaquelin Roy's been pretty good in small doses. Harrison Phillips is Harrison Phillips, but
yep,
they're doing this out of lighter personnel more often than not. Josh Metellus has been the will linebacker in
yep,
a lot of formations, but they're able to fill the run so effectively at times. I think because of how they disguise their back end coverage and how they disguise
yep,
their pass rush pre snap, because you can load the box up without calling a blitz and without necessarily sacrificing too much on the back end the way he does it,
right,
because you might have 7 in the box, uh, and then the other 4 might be 8-10 yards deep, and you're rotating back out of that. You might have 7-8 in the box, and maybe you drop 5 of them, We've seen him drop 8 a ton this season,
Yeah.
more
Yep.
than twice as much as the next team in drop 8 rate. So, if you can get Jordan Love scared at the line of scrimmage, get them to have some sort of panic again, especially if Josh Myers is out,
Right.
and that chain of the communication isn't quite as strong, you're going to have a lot of issues post snap as a
Right.
Packers offense as well. If he thinks he's reading something correctly pre snap, he's probably not. So that's exactly what happened to Brock Purdy on the game losing interception.
Yep.
Brian Flores was showing like a cover 2. Post snap, they rotated into a cover 3 where Cam Bynum was kind of the hook defender, or kind of like a robber on that play. And so the whole time Purdy's expecting Cam Bynum to get depth, but he's actually coming forward and he just jumps the dig. And those kind of things, and that was a drop 8 look as well. Those kind of things I think are going to fluster a guy like Jordan Love to an extent that might even, be a little reminiscent of what they did to Bryce Young. This is another first-year starter.
Yep.
As much experience as he has under Aaron Rodgers, I think it might be a bloodbath.
Yeah.
I think they might really, really dominate on defense in this game.
You think we might win by 2 possessions, John?
I think let's get to it, man. Let's do predictions because
let's do it.
Off cuff on last episode, you and I both predicted a 2-possession win.
Yes.
And I haven't wavered.
I haven't either. Do you remember
you said 28-16.
Yeah, but I think
for whatever reason yours is sticking out more in my head than mine, but I think mine was 30-17.
Yep.
So we're predicting double-digit margin.
Yep.
2-score win. And I think it starts right away. I think the San Fran game was the turning of a page. And I think you'll see this team start to operate cleanly and efficiently and explosively early on the offensive side of the football, play mistake-free ball. It's going to be cold out there, probably 30 or so, but it doesn't look like precipitation, so we'll see. It shouldn't be a crazy home field advantage kind of situation where you're like, oh, we're going to Lambeau in December. I don't expect one of those, and I also just don't think that this Packers offense has the capacity to come back from really any deficit against the Vikings because what they're going to be able to do against them on the defense of the ball.
And I like when I was going back to watch part of the replay of the Broncos and Packers game, I don't know if Aaron Jones is even fully healthy and fully right yet. I know he's back playing.
He was still limited in a couple practice days this week.
Yeah, and I think like him leaking out would be normally something I'd be a little bit afraid of to break a 35-yard chunk play here and there and really kind of make it hard for us to get off the field on third down. But I just don't think I don't think he's at 100%, and maybe it's just because he's getting a little older too. I don't know. But so even that doesn't really scare me too much. So I'm really almost makes me more nervous that we don't have anything to be fully afraid of. But also, we don't have this. We've kind of faced our adversity earlier on this year than we did last year, and so we don't have the team already knows we don't have the luxury of taking a game off. So there should be no excuse for not showing up and treating this like the most important game of the season and things like that. So I really hope we're in good shape there. I love our defense in this matchup. I was going to squeeze in my stat about our guy Cam Bynum. I know I won't shut up about him this year, but for everyone out there, he's third in the league in solo tackles with 48. I should double check. And that may not seem overly impressive, but the other 9 guys in the top 10 are all linebackers. And so I wanted to give a shout out to Cam Bynum because he's been all over the place. He's been a sure tackler. He got his 2 picks to get him some spotlight last week, and so I'm hoping for another pick for him this week in Lambeau. That would be a nice way to keep the momentum rolling for him and our defense.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. He's been awesome. There's been a lot of guys jumping out on defense that just seems like everybody's playing their best ball on that side of the football, and I think a lot of that credit goes to Brian Flores. A lot of it's Kevin O'Connell, just from like a culture setting standpoint, I think at the top. And for those guys working hard, buying into the system, and playing their responsibility. Josh Metellus too has been revelatory. I tweeted today You know the newer Star Trek with the German guy that I can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
I tweeted a GIF of that guy, and I was like, Josh Metellus when Brian Flores asks him to do literally anything
Yes,
on the
exactly.
defensive side of the ball. He's been the Swiss Army knife,
Yeah, he's been
and
everywhere.
uh,
Mhm.
that's crucial
And
to
he got
it
he
functions
got
this way.
he got paid this offseason, right? He was one of the
Yeah,
new
he got a
contract
2-year extension.
extensions. Yeah.
Yep.
So good on him for responding to that as well, because I think for some people, you look at a name like Josh Metellus and you're like, well, he's definitely not an elite player, I guess, and he's definitely not someone that is going to garner the headlines when he gets re-signed. But obviously, the coaching staff recognize what he has to offer, and he's living up to it and responding. So good on him as well, for sure.
Yep. I could not be happier with the defensive group, the way they performed. I think they're going to go out and have another big game this Sunday, and that's all I've got. I've got 30-17 Vikings. Josh has 28-16 Vikings. 2-score win. They're going to be 4-4 coming out of this week. Lions are going to lose again.
Yes, to the
Um,
Raiders.
we'll keep gaining ground, and yeah, man, Raiders are desperate. They might get one over on them.
Yep, you never know.
That'd be sweet. So anyway, it's always skull to the bowl. I expect a big win this weekend. What's more likely is it will come down to the wire, and we'll be talking about how we squeaked out.
It'll be a Greg Joseph 49-yarder as time expires to win 12
Yeah,
to 11 or some.
or it's a tie.
Oh yeah.
We'll see.
Oh no.
See what happens.
Oh
But thanks
no.
for sticking around if you have to this point. I'm John. This is Josh. We are BiteSizeVikes, and we'll be back probably Tuesday night with another episode for you, recapping this Packers game. Looking forward to the week after, and we're just going to keep it rolling. Skull to the bowl,
Skull.
and we're going to cue the outro music. Thanks, guys.